Hey there chickens! Today I'm making this video about intuition for a very dear client of mine because I was talking with them about the inner voice and learning how to trust the inner voice and how to turn to it more regularly, how to let it through, and I thought the best thing to do to help them and whoever else out there might be struggling with this subject or wondering how to trust the gut more would be to make a video and just throw a lot of this advice into it and just try to collect as many of my thoughts as possible on the subject into a video. So I really hope this will be helpful to my client and whoever else out there might be in need of these tips and techniques at the moment. I'm drinking strawberry tea today. Such a treat. I got a selection box for Christmas by a company called Cafe Claire, and the strawberry tea is one of their black tea blends, and it's really nice. It's subtle, but it's really nice. One of the things that is difficult about intuition is that it is a step beyond the rational. It's a step beyond the cognitive. I don't see it as being in the other direction to the rational. I don't see it as being the polar opposite of reasoning and rationality and all that kind of stuff. I see it as one step beyond that. So for me, I believe that you could weigh up all of the sensible, practical pros and cons of a situation and really kind of get to the rational reasons why you want to do what you want to do or the reasons why you think what you're thinking. But I feel sometimes intuition still makes that final decision for you. Intuition is really kind of the thing, the crux of it, the thing that clinches the deal. Intuition is a little bit more slippery because it's a just knowing. It's a deep down just knowing that a certain avenue is right or that you need to take a certain exit. And you can't always explain that rationally. You can't always just, you know, show your workings, if you like, and get somebody else to understand why it is that you really deep down feel that something needs to be your course of action. It is a just knowing, it is a deep down just knowing, and the vast majority of people that you come across in this world are going to be able to relate to what you mean when you say that sometimes you just have this deep inner knowing and it's not necessarily based on anything that you can pinpoint, it's just a feeling. You know, it's just a feeling. When we don't follow an intuitive hunch, it can be incredibly disappointing afterwards when we realise that we were right. Especially when we had quite a strong feeling and it was kind of niggling and it wouldn't go away and we decided to push it down, we decided to suppress it, and then later on everything comes to light and it becomes abundantly obvious that you really should have just listened to that inner voice and you really wish you had have done. And I think that's why a lot of people seek out advice on how to trust the gut more. It's because they're getting those signals, they're getting sometimes those deep down feelings, but they're telling themselves that they're not getting those feelings, or that those feelings were based on fear or anxiety, or that they shouldn't trust the gut, that it's silly to trust the gut, or that other people will judge them for trusting it, you know? So I think that's why a lot of people come to this kind of advice, because they realise that they had an intuitive hunch and they didn't take it for some reason, they didn't pay attention to it, and they live to regret that decision. So I think that's why a lot of people come to guidance like this. So on that note then, my first piece of advice would be to accept that your intuitive hunches are not necessarily rational. They can't always be boiled down into a neat little sentence or two on, you know, exactly why you feel a certain way about something. It's just a hunch. And I think sometimes we kind of go round in circles trying to rationalise and analyse, like, well, why do I feel that way? Why did I get that impression? Why do I get that feeling? Why do I keep getting that feeling? And I really think that can be a little bit of an emotional and cognitive cul-de-sac, babes. I really do. Sometimes we just have to, you know, say it's a hunch. And that's the other thing that I think can be a real problem when we're trying to listen to our intuition, is that we feel like we've got to justify it to other people. And when we say, I don't know, it's just a feeling, it's just a hunch, I've just got to do this or whatever, we can often come up against judgment from other people, or we can come up against people trying to say, well, rationalise it for me, explain it for me, justify it for me, make me believe it. And that's another thing that we really need to let go of. We've really got to just feel that we are entitled to own our intuitive responses, feel that we are allowed to make decisions based on a deep knowing, a deep inner knowing. The just know, the just knowing is what I call it. Like, I just know. I just deep down know, you know, that it's not for me, or that it is for me, or whatever. So don't undermine your intuition, and don't let other people undermine it either. Just because you're going with something from your inner voice that can't quite really be explained or neatly categorised doesn't mean that you haven't looked at the rational pros and cons, the logical landscape of the situation. You know, you're just choosing to use the other tools as well at your disposal. And sometimes those tools are not necessarily quite so cognitively straightforward. I think that you can definitely make an argument for the fact that there are large sort of sections of culture and society and group dynamics that don't really support you going on a hunch, you know. There are some areas where the idea of a hunch is fully supported. Like, I think in business sometimes, in entrepreneurial business certainly, that knowing can be an exciting feeling. It's like a lot of businesses have thrived and a lot of organisations have gotten started through just that deep down feeling of wanting to put something into action, feeling like something might be a good investment or might be a good idea. But I think in other ways it's not so supported, and we are kind of expected to get all of our reasons straight, get all of our ducks in a row. And so you've got to give yourself that deep internal permission to say, you know what, I've looked at the facts and I get what you're trying to say, but something's calling me in this other direction. I'm going to start by going in a very kind of psych heavy direction. I'm sure that won't fucking surprise anyone. But for me, the most important tool that I've found over the years to help me to trust my gut more and really lean into my intuition has been the experiences of not following it and then regretting not following it. To me, that is the most important framework for understanding more about my intuition when it comes into play, and how I can strengthen my ability to follow it and not be afraid of it. It's the mistakes I've made. It's the experiences that I've had of fucking knowing that something wasn't right, or a relationship wasn't going to be worthy of me, or, you know, I was going to go down a certain avenue and I was going to wish I'd gone down another one, you know, like the hunches that I didn't follow. And the way that I use these experiences of regret and these experiences of like, oh, shoulda, woulda, coulda, the way that I use them as fuel for my learning is to actually examine, okay, I had a hunch there and I didn't follow it. Why not? Why didn't I feel like I could follow that hunch? And a lot of the time, this leads me to the unearthing of a pattern. There is some kind of a pattern in that. Not always, but I think the vast majority of the time, through my 20s, when I really started to think to myself, God, I need to be on my own side more. I need to listen to myself more. I do have wisdom. I am a sage person, and I can feel, you know, sometimes that something isn't right. When I started to kind of exercise my intuition more and try to find my right to use it, I unearthed a lot of patterns, and it was either patterns that were specific to like one relationship or one situation, or it was patterns that were, you know, a lot more overall. So for example, if I decided not to follow an intuitive hunch relating to something within my friendship with a person, it could be that when I decide to examine that situation, I realise that I actually struggle to exercise my power with that person as a general rule. It's a pattern with that specific person where I feel like I can't do what I want or say what I want or say no, you know what I mean? And so it's that relationship specifically that I need to look at. Sometimes the pattern I would unearth would be bigger. It would be, you know, relating to an overall theme. So for example, one might recognise that they are just overall not very good at using their intuition when it comes to matters of friendship, or when it comes to matters of creativity, or when it comes to matters of work. And you unearth these patterns, and you can also begin to see what the main reasons are why you don't follow your intuition. When you look back over the times that you didn't follow it and you kind of want to kick yourself, you can really go, okay, so that is the issue. I'm people pleasing. I'm trying to make sure everybody else is happy first, and it's causing me to try and suppress my intuition. Or I'm scared of looking, you know, stupid or woo-woo or whatever the fuck by saying I'm going with a hunch. So, you know, I'm trying to appear like I'm really going with rationality and I'm trying to suppress my intuition. There's always reasons why we don't follow our hunches, but the best way to learn is by looking at the mistakes we've made in not following our hunches, looking at the regrets that we have, looking at those times where we just think, shit, I really wish I'd listened to myself there. For me, words of power are a really good way to make sure that I'm keeping in touch with my intuition, that I'm maintaining that steady phone contact with the deepest layers of myself. I think that when I'm going into situations where I really feel like I need to stay in contact with what I'm feeling and with my hunches, words of power can be helpful. When I spend time at my altar, I can use, you know, affirmations or words of power, mantras or anything else of the sort to remind me that I am allowed to stay in contact with my intuition. I have permission to do that, and it's a really good tool for me, and I need to keep in contact with it. So I'd recommend, if you struggle to listen to your intuition, or if you know that you're going into a situation where it might be more difficult than usual, to really listen to what you are feeling and go with your gut. Use those words of power, you know, say them out loud, light a candle, light some incense that has a very empowering kind of yang scent to it, and really just anchor into that power. Remind yourself that you are always allowed to pick up the phone to your hunches, to your inner voice, and no one and nothing should be permitted to stop you from doing that. You know, a really, really good one to use actually is the chant that I used in my Locate Your Power video, Om Namo Gurudev Namo, which is a Kundalini yoga mantra, and it means I bow to the teacher that lives inside me. So, you know, if you're really looking for something super powerful that has a lot of potency to it, that a lot of people use and a lot of people find meaning in, then Om Namo Gurudev Namo might be helpful. Equally, you can just write your own affirmation. You can just say something like, I am sage and wise and I follow my deepest inner knowing. I am sage and wise and I follow my deepest inner knowing. You know, and if you don't like using those present tense kind of affirmations, then instead just preface it with, I give myself permission. I give myself permission to follow my deepest inner knowing. You know, something like that, something that works for you. Use your journal. Use your journal. If you write at all or if you type at all, it can be a really good way to dig down to what's actually going on in your intuition. If you're struggling to really understand what you deep down think and feel about something, start writing. At first, a load of gobbledygook might come out. You might need to write for a couple of pages before you really start to get into the flow, but I often think that we can kind of move into the higher self when we are writing. We can go up into the crown, we can observe ourselves, we can become the witness of our own behaviours and our own perceptions, and that can be a really good way of connecting with what it is that we really feel about something, our hunch, because I think the ego can get in the way. I actually think there are a lot of ego-based reasons sometimes not to follow the intuition, like for example wanting to people please, wanting to be thought of a certain way by others, wanting to think of yourself a certain way, and wanting to suppress your intuition because your intuition doesn't honour that kind of version of yourself that your ego wants to maintain. So I think sometimes it's good to just flow into something where we try to kind of detach from the ego's insistence on its perspective, and we just kind of flow into something and allow ourselves to kind of rise up above and go, oh, okay, so that's what's going on, that's why I'm telling myself I need to do this, but deep down inside I want to do this, you know. So it's something that takes practice, and it's something that I have been doing for years and years and years. You'll know if you watched my video scrapbook episode where I showed you guys my old journals that I've been doing it for a really long time. I'm an old hand, so I'm not going to say that you can crack this overnight if you don't have a journaling habit. But even just making some notes, you know, even just making some bullet points, anything that you can do. You can throw the paper away afterwards, you don't need to keep it, but just allow yourself that processing where you can actually see what's in your head. It's all jumbled up when it's inside, you know. If you can actually see the thoughts and the feelings coming through and look at them on the paper, sometimes that can give you the light bulb moment that you actually need. Okay, so the first thing that I said in this video was that, for me, one of the most important tools for strengthening my link to my intuition is actually excavating the experiences of not having followed it. That, to me, is the numero uno tool when it comes to strengthening intuition, is looking at the experiences of not following it. And it's kind of ironic because I think a lot of people come to advice about the intuition, as I said, because they haven't been following it. And then it's like, well, you know, the fact that you haven't been following it is exactly what is going to help you to get a stronger bond with it, because you need to excavate those experiences. You've got to be, you know, the archaeologist. So look back over the times that you haven't listened to your gut. And as you're looking through those experiences, ask yourself, did you have any physical sensations? Were you engaging in any habits? Or were you feeling any strong emotions coming through that seemed unusual to you, that didn't seem like they fit to you? Anything like that can be evidence of your gut trying to speak to you. Now, some people get ailments. Some people get tension in the shoulders, tension in the back when they know that something isn't right. Some people's temperature gauge feels a little bit off. Some people get aches and pains. There's all kinds of different things that can happen physically that are signs that your intuition is saying something or doing something. You know, something's in the post. Something is at work inside of you that is asking to be honoured. That, to me, has been an important thing in my own journey. For some people, their eating habits change. When they're trying to suppress a really deep intuitive hunch, they may eat to stuff that intuitive hunch down. It's tension eating, and it's because something is asking to be honoured, something is asking to be looked at. Some people might go in the other direction and restrict. Some people can't sleep. Some people really, you know, kind of go into temporary bouts of insomnia and things like that. When I look back at times when I didn't trust my intuition, I found when I actually excavated the experiences that I was talking to a lot of people about the situation. I was overly wanting to engage with other people about the situation, and I was really letting myself become a little bit fixated, or I was asking a lot of different people for their opinions. I wanted a lot of interaction with people, and in hindsight, having actually looked at the fact that I didn't follow my hunch, I realised that that is a good sign that an intuitive hunch is in there for me, is when I start to really ask other people what they think I should do, what the situation looks like to them, you know. Now, I'm really interested in human psychology, and so obviously I'm interested in engaging people about what they think about stuff and what their perspective is, but for me there's a difference. Like, I realised as I looked through situations where I hadn't followed my hunches, that prior to deciding to not follow my hunch, I had really just been trying to get everybody's input and, you know, or everybody's validation, or, you know, I was really just inviting a lot of people to what was supposed to be a solo mission to figure out what I wanted to do. And so now when I start to want to like rally the troops and get everybody's opinion and, you know, find out in fine detail what everybody else thinks I should do or what everybody else thinks the situation calls for, I step back and I go, this might be a good time to take some moments in solitude, because what you're doing is you're actually trying to almost drown out your hunch, or you might be afraid of your hunch, you know, you might be convincing yourself that you don't have the power to make the decision that you want to make, and it's like you're asking other people to co-sign. So step back, you know. That's one of the key things that I learned from excavating my own intuition-based mistakes, you know, the times where I just didn't follow my hunch, didn't listen to myself. I've looked back and I've thought, oh, I really wanted a lot of people involved there. I wanted a lot of people to give me their input. And I actually, in the end, ended up not listening to my input, so I need to step back. And solitude is a great tool, actually, for those who are struggling to understand what their intuition is telling them, or for people that really want to make sure that they are listening to their deep down wisdom and not being too carried away with external influences. I think solitude is very underrated. You know, I always say to my clients that the 3 S's are really vital: silence, stillness and solitude. They have never led me wrong. Sometimes you just need to shut it off, filter it out, get away from the noise. Get away from the noise, listen to the voice that is inside of you. And that, for me, requires silence, stillness and solitude. I love me some chaos. I love me some noise, okay? I love, you know, being around people, and I believe that a lot of real, true shamanic wisdom can come through when you are in the midst of the chaos, when you are in the midst of the noise and the bustle and the momentum and the drama and whatever. But I do know that I can have too much of a good thing, and I can really want to throw myself into life to stop myself from listening to my soul, and I just have to go away. I just have to go away and be disciplined enough to bring the 3 S's into beingness: silence, stillness, solitude. You know, if you know you need that, give yourself some of that good shit. You won't regret it. I mentioned habits, any little habits that you form while you are suppressing a hunch. For me, it's sometimes picking my skin around my fingers and thumbs, fiddling quite a lot, you know, that kind of thing. That can be a crappy habit that I have when I'm not listening to myself, when I'm not truly with myself and listening to my hunches. Messiness and disorganization, clutter, I find that is sometimes a sign that I'm supposed to be listening to myself. I'm supposed to be really going with my hunches, addressing my intuition, and I'm not doing that. So for me, these are just my things that I've noticed in the aftermath of not following a hunch. When I've actually excavated and looked at what's there, I'm like, okay, so that could be a sign that I had an intuitive hunch and I was doing that there, so I'll make sure I look for that again. And now when those things come up, you know, like when I start to pick my skin, or when things start to get a bit out of hand in my flat, I say to myself, wait a minute, do you need to listen to yourself about something? What's happening here? And that's been really helpful for me personally. So if you try that, just have a look at a few of the situations where you didn't follow your hunches and see what it leads you to. You guys know by now, I think a lot of you, that I am ritual happy. I am pro ritual all the way. Even if it's just a simple little thing like lighting a candle, lighting some incense, you know, doing the okie dokie and turning around, whatever it is. I just feel like ritual is oh, it is so cleansing, it is so life affirming, it is so transformative, and it's just very important. It's just really important. To me, it's been vital to my process of letting things in and letting things out, inhaling, exhaling, you know. And I feel like ritual to invite a greater connection with your intuition can be really good. Now, I've already mentioned words of power, which on their own have an incredibly ritualistic effect, and if you were to say them every single morning for a number of mornings, then that obviously would be an ongoing ritual which would remind you that you want to connect more with your intuition, and you really want to give it a go, and you really want to work with it and not against it. I think there are other rituals which are maybe more kind of maybe stand on ceremony a little bit more. They're maybe a little bit more structured, or they just feel bigger, or they're in alignment with the moon phase or with a certain Sabbat, something like that. I think that can also be really cool. And, you know, when you're designing a ritual that is intended to invite your connection with your intuition to strengthen, I would recommend really going there all the way, thinking about why it is that you tend to suppress your intuition. If you figure out, for example, that you suppress your intuition because you were never really encouraged to have your own thoughts and feelings, you were never really encouraged to have your own mind, so you tend to ignore your deepest hunches. If you discover that during your process of excavation, then really let the ritual speak to that. Speak to your inner child, you know, tell your inner child that they have the right to be independent and free thinking. They have the power. Speak to your inner adolescent. Make your peace with the teenager you once were. Hey, I know there are teenagers that watch me, so sorry that wasn't very inclusive. But make your peace with the younger versions of yourself. Really kind of forgive the people that made you feel powerless if that's what you need to do. Invite healing for the parts of you that feel powerless, for the parts of you that feel like they can't really have a say. I think ritual can go deep like that. It can go deep like that. There's layers to this shizzle, babies. There's layers. And I think that's just, it's the beautiful thing about ritual, is that there are layers. Whenever I've realised a long-standing pattern and it's come to light, ritual is my way of saying, I acknowledge this pattern, I see it, I embrace it, I hold it to me. I'm not going to leave it outside anymore. I hold it to me, I see it as me, and it's okay. And that to me is that shadow work, and I am nothing if not a sincere shadow worker. I don't believe that I can change anything that I don't hold to me, that I don't witness, that I don't see in its 360 entirety, and say, hey, you know what, it's okay, I can choose differently. I have the power now because I can see, I can be a witness. I can only have the power to change it once I'm a witness to it. So if you feel like you are really divorced from your inner voice, and you begin to know upon excavating these experiences of ignoring your inner voice, why that is, bring that to the ritual. And no, a ritual is not like snap your fingers and it's done, it's not like that. Sometimes rituals need to be done and done and done again. Sometimes they only symbolise your intention for things to get better, and they might not necessarily get better for a while. There might be more work to do. It's not a quick fix. It's not something that I'm hugely idealistic and overblown about, but it has helped me. It's helped countless people. It's helped people through every era and civilization. Rituals are vital, and I get really sad that they're not more of the lifeblood and the fabric of our modern Western society now. It really sucks, Jung had this whole idea about, how rituals are going the way of the dodo, and how we need more rites of passage back, and we need to go through, certain ritualistic experiences that help us to connect the personal with the transpersonal, with the mythopoetic, and that is a very important part of our development. And when we abolish ritual, then we're abolishing, a vital part of our connection to the collective unconscious. I'm not sure if that's quite, a really academic Jungian way of saying it, because I'm not an academic Jungian, but there's something in that, there's something to that, and I'm really getting into my Jung nerd mode, so let's move it along, Kelly, let's move it the fuck along, okay. A couple more things I want to say before I round this video about intuition up. First of all, I do find that a lot of people who feel comfortable to use their intuition to guide others and help others are the same people who are cutting themselves off from it. And that means that you have an incredible superpower that you are using for the good of others but not for yourself. And I really would examine that. Ask yourself if your intuition kicks in for other people very strongly, and you let that happen, you honour that, you guide people with that, you know, or you at least tell them what the benefit of your wisdom is, what it is that you think and feel about their situation or whatever. Ask yourself if you are one of those people who finds it a lot easier to tune into your inner voice when it comes to other people's situations. You may be afraid of your own power and how it could be effectual in your own life, that is for sure. And if you look at some of the situations where you have helped other people by using your intuitive insights, then you can work out how to transfer those intuitive insights to you. But I think a lot of people don't realise, they don't recognise that they are using their intuition big time to help other people, but not using it to help themselves and not using it to further their own journey, you know, which is a really sad thing. So I just thought that I would mention that as well. I know that probably there will be a few people watching this and thinking, well, I think that a lot of things are my inner voice, but then I wonder if they're just fear-based responses or anxiety. You know, so for example, we could tell ourselves that we intuitively feel like we shouldn't try anything new, we shouldn't do anything, we shouldn't go and do that thing that we really want to do, we shouldn't follow our dream. And actually that stuff could be fear-based responses, that could be anxiety, that could be a fear of success or a fear of failure. So how do we know? How do we know that it is, that it's not an intuitive hunch and that it is in fact just a fear-based response? Well, you know, I think that that's a little bit more of a complex issue because it does vary hugely from person to person. I mean, I would personally say that deep down inside of myself, I know when I'm on the BS carousel and I know when I need to hop the fuck off. You know what I mean? For me, that's very much how it works. I have definitely in the past told myself that I have an intuitive hunch that I should just play it safe and play the small game and not do anything scary. But deep down inside, I know that's crap. I know that's not intuition. And the way that you know, or the way that I know that it's not intuition, is through doing a lot of these steps that I've explained to you in the course of this video, getting to know what my intuition feels like, what it's characterised by, where are the emotional responses, the physical responses, the habits that come into play when I'm getting a hunch and when I need to listen to it. You know, doing all of these things, examining these things, has made it even harder to bullshit myself in recent years because I know what my intuition looks and feels like. And I know the difference between that and an anxiety-led response, which is really about me staying safe and remaining in the comfort zone. So I think a lot of the exploration that we do around what the intuition is for us, what it feels like for us, what it's characterised by, what the signposts are, that work will help you to become better at understanding when you're just using intuition as an excuse to play small and stay small. So I think that's really the main thing that I would say. I know when I'm BSing myself. I know when something isn't a hunch, but is actually just a fear of taking action. And I think that's because I've done the work to understand what my intuition feels like and what happens when I try and suppress it versus, you know, what is actually coming from a fear-based response. And I've figured out what that feels like too. I've figured out what it feels like to want to stay in the comfort zone, to want to clutch so tightly at the comfort zone. You know, I know more about myself now as a product of doing this work, you know, doing the work, showing up to do what we like to call the work in psycho-spiritual circles. And I fucking love calling it that because that is most certainly what it is. It is the magnum opus. It is the great work. And I wish you every piece of joy and luck and success and positivity on that journey of doing your inner work and becoming the most actualized version of yourself. Have fun with it, guys. Much love and blessed be.